Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, right, in your country, like the actual physical borders, the entire government is just gone,
Just completely erase.
completely erased, and your money. It is completely worthless, not because of, a stock market crash or hyperinflation or anything like that, but just because the very concept of currency has been entirely wiped from human consciousness.
It's just not a thing anymore.
Right. Your marriage is dissolved,
Yeah.
driver's license, gone. You don't own a house, you don't own a car, and you don't belong to any nation.
Which, I mean, sounds terrifying to most people.
Oh, absolutely. But according to the source we are analyzing today, this isn't the plot of some dystopian survival movie. This is actually the blueprint for the absolute peak of human civilization.
Yeah, it is an incredibly provocative premise. I mean, we are looking at a vision of the future that systematically dismantles, well, pretty much every single pillar we currently use to prop up human society.
Exactly. So jumping right in, our single source for this deep dive is a relatively recent essay. It's titled The Connotation of the Highest Level of Human Civilization.
Quite the title.
Yeah, it's bold. It was written by an author using the moniker Dayform Buddha. It was edited by Peter and published on May 2, 2023. And our goal today is just to put this fascinating, highly unorthodox blueprint under the microscope.
Right, to really see what makes it tick.
Exactly. We're not here to endorse tossing our passports in the ocean or, abandoning the rule of law. But engaging with this text, I think, forces us to ask some really uncomfortable questions about why we built our world the way we did.
Yeah.
And frankly, whether our current systems are actually holding us back.
Which is exactly the value of utopian literature. I mean, whether it's Plato's Republic or a modern internet manifesto, these texts hold up a mirror for you. They ask us to justify the invisible cages we've all sort of agreed to live inside.
Yeah.
And this author argues that our current cages are absolutely suffocating us.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand this utopian blueprint, we first have to look at the demolition phase. The text calls for what is essentially a great erasure.
Right, the wiping of the slate.
Right. It claims that in the highest stage of civilization, there will be no laws, period. No countries, no currency, no traditional marriage, and no nuclear family structure.
And the text is exhaustively specific about what gets erased, too. It's not just some vague anti-establishment sentiment.
No, they list it out.
They really do. The author explicitly states there will be absolutely no forms of identification, no ID cards, no passports, driver's licenses, work permits, medical licenses, judge certifications, professor certifications.
Usually goes on and on.
Yeah, business licenses. The
Wow.
entire bureaucratic apparatus of human validation is just wiped clean.
So I read that list in the essay, and
Yeah.
my immediate reaction was just to focus on the logistics of a world without licenses.
Okay.
Because if I don't have a medical license, what's stopping me, an untrained person, from just, walking into an operating room and performing surgery?
Right, the practical nightmare scenario.
Exactly. Or, as the author specifically brings up, what stops an unskilled driver from getting behind the wheel of a car and causing a massive pileup? It feels like an express ticket to unmitigated chaos. It's like playing a massive global board game where everyone just suddenly agrees to throw away the rule book.
What's fascinating here is how the author leans directly into that exact skepticism.
Oh, they totally know we're going to ask that.
Absolutely. The text acknowledges that a modern reader will look at this and immediately predict chaos, using that specific unskilled driver example you mentioned. But the author's counterargument requires us to stop viewing human behavior through the lens of a punitive society.
Meaning a society that punishes bad behavior.
Exactly. They argue that we simply cannot judge this advanced civilization using our current constrained consciousness.
Because in our current consciousness, we just assume people only behave because a little piece of plastic in their wallet threatens them with jail time if they don't.
Right. We assume humans are naturally reckless. But in this highest level of civilization, the claim is that humanity has undergone a fundamental transformation. Everyone naturally exudes truth, goodness, beauty, love, sincerity, and trust, all from within.
That's a lot of adjectives.
It is.
Yeah.
So, to answer the driver question, the author argues that an unskilled driver simply would not get behind the wheel. Why? Because, according to the text, he loves others more than he loves himself.
I mean, I have to push back on that. That is putting an astronomical amount of faith in human goodness.
It really is.
You're saying that instead of external guardrails like traffic cops or, licensing boards, the guardrail is entirely internal. It's basically weaponized empathy. But human biology is wired for self-preservation and tribalism. We protect our own.
Well, from an evolutionary biology perspective, you're right. But the author's premise is that absolute freedom actually acts as a catalyst to evolve past that tribalism.
How so?
It's similar to the concept of shared space urban design. Think of those towns in the Netherlands that removed all their traffic lights, all the lane markings, the stop
Oh
signs.
yeah, I've read about those. It seems crazy.
It does, but counterintuitively, traffic fatalities actually drop significantly in those areas. Because without the external rule telling you when it's safe to go, you are forced to make eye contact with pedestrians. You're forced to take active, personal responsibility for the people around you.
Wow, that's a great analogy. The rules themselves were making people complacent and reckless.
Exactly. And the author is applying that exact psychological mechanism, but scaling it up to the entirety of human existence. They use a concept called emulating the thousand-year world mode.
Which is what exactly?
In many esoteric traditions, it refers to a prophesied era of ultimate peace and enlightenment. The text argues that restrictions and constraints actually stimulate human selfishness, greed, and opportunism. When you tell someone they can only have a certain amount of property, their immediate instinct is to hoard it and defend it.
Right. Which brings us to the actual structure of this new world. Because if they remove all national laws, all borders, and all private property, society still has to function, right? People still need to eat.
They do.
And I was reading this section on the replacement framework, which the author calls the second home mode. And the logistics of this are incredibly specific. This isn't just a vague, free love commune where everyone just vibes.
Far from it. It's a highly regimented, globally interconnected system.
Right. The text explains that all traditional modes of production and family life will be replaced by tens of millions of these second homes scattered across the earth.
And the numbers are very specific.
Yeah, each home consists of exactly 30 to 300 members. But here is the mechanism that really caught my attention. Every 3 years, there's a mandatory rotation. Every single member has to pack up and move to live and work in a completely different second home.
Yes, the constant global shuffling is the engine of the society. In this system, your biological family ceases to be your primary unit.
Which is a huge shift.
Massive. All human needs food, clothing, housing, transportation, and even the intensive care required for aging and death are handled collectively by the members of whichever second home you currently reside in. You basically belong to the Earth family.
So it's essentially a massive lifelong version of a global exchange student program. But the mandatory 3-year rotation seems incredibly disruptive to me. I mean, if I spend 3 years building relationships with 300 people, and then we're all forced to just scatter to different corners of the globe, doesn't that destroy long-term community bonds?
Well, the author would argue that you are holding on to a localized definition of community. By constantly severing local attachments, the system forces you to build a global attachment.
Oh, I see.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this constant free flow physically and psychologically prevents the formation of cliques, cartels, or factions.
Because you're never anywhere long enough to form an us.
Exactly. If you don't belong to a specific nation and you don't own any property and your neighbors change every 36 months, the entire concept of us versus them completely dissolves. Okay, I see the logic in preventing tribalism. But what about institutional memory? Like, work still has to happen. The text mentions people still generating power, farming, making clothes, educating children, shepherding, which is an interesting one, and doing technological innovation in labs.
Yes, all the functions of a modern society.
Right. So if I'm a neurosurgeon or a nuclear physicist running a power plant, and I have to rotate to a completely new facility every 3 years, how does society maintain any level of complex expertise?
The text suggests that work is freely chosen based on an individual's intelligence and talents. But you've hit on a core friction point of any utopian labor model.
Yeah, who does the hard jobs?
Right. Historically, in systems like the Israeli kibbutzim, which functioned as highly successful, moneyless collective communities for decades, actually people often did rotate jobs. But that was on a microscale, usually revolving around agriculture or light industry.
Exactly. A prototype of a few hundred people farming together is essentially just a commune. You can't scale a self-selected intentional community to 8 billion people and expect the global supply chain for microchips to just keep functioning.
It is a massive leap.
It really is.
Yeah.
Without currency or private property, what motivates someone to take the night shift at a water treatment plant? Why wouldn't I just choose to be a shepherd for 3 years and sit in a meadow?
It's a fair question. The author answers this by doubling down on the psychological shift we talked about earlier. The text claims that once the pressure of survival is removed, because the Earth family guarantees your housing and food labor stops being a transaction, it becomes a joyful expression of your natural talents.
So you work at the water treatment plant because you just genuinely love clean water for humanity.
Exactly. You work in the lab because you genuinely want to advance the species. And if you think this is purely theoretical, the author actually throws in a rather bold claim.
Oh, you mean the 14-year prototype?
Yes. The text explicitly states that this isn't just a thought experiment. The author claims to have proven the viability of the second home production and life mode through 14 years of practical application.
I mean, I am deeply skeptical of that. Running a closed-loop commune of devoted followers for 14 years is a completely different universe than replacing the entire socioeconomic infrastructure of Earth.
The scale is incomparable, yes.
Right. In a small group, social pressure and shared ideology replace laws. If someone slacks off, they get ostracized. But on a global scale, you can't ostracize someone who's guaranteed to be rotated to a new home in a few months anyway.
Which is precisely why the author insists that this isn't just an administrative change, but a profound spiritual one. The system requires an absolute eradication of the desire for private property.
You have to literally not want things anymore.
Right. The text claims this rotation entirely eradicates turmoil and war. Hunger disappears because resources are shared universally, and crimes like theft, robbery, corruption, and fraud. The author says the probability of those occurring becomes, quote, negligible.
Because you can't steal if no one owns anything, and everyone has access to everything anyway.
Exactly.
You don't steal a loaf of bread if money doesn't exist, and the bakery literally belongs to the Earth family. It's an elegant, airtight logic, provided you accept the foundational premise that human nature can be fundamentally reprogrammed.
Which is the biggest if of all time.
Truly. But implementing a completely leaderless, globally cooperative society is inherently contradictory, because someone has to actually design, initiate, and enforce this massive shift, which leads to the most jarring part of the essay.
Yeah, the tonal shift at the end of the document is remarkable. Proposing a borderless, moneyless, globally rotating society requires an almost unimaginable amount of confidence. And the author steps out from behind the curtain to directly address the reader.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text acknowledges that any sane person reading this is going to have 100,000 questions about how it could possibly work. And the author's response is essentially, don't worry your little head about it.
Pretty much.
They state unequivocally that they have thought of all the problems and they alone know all the solutions.
It is a staggering assertion of authority. The author writes that no one's thinking in the world today is deeper than theirs and no solution is superior to theirs. They even specifically call out something called the Eastern Saint.
Which we should probably clarify for the listener. In many Eastern esoteric and spiritual traditions, there are prophecies of a coming sage or messianic figure, an Eastern saint who will bring about an era of global harmony. It's a deeply revered concept.
It is. And the author looks directly at that cultural expectation and declares that even the highly anticipated Eastern Saint will not surpass their own theory and practice.
Which brings us to what I see as the ultimate contradiction here. I mean, we just spent this entire deep dive outlining a society predicated on absolute freedom. No bosses, no politicians, no judges, no hierarchy whatsoever.
Absolute egalitarianism.
Right. And yet, the author looks into the camera and essentially says, I have literally solved the entirety of the human condition. I am smarter than the greatest spiritual figures in history, and you must follow my specific blueprint. Doesn't this supreme, unquestionable confidence completely contradict the universal equality the text is preaching? It's like a tech founder claiming they haven't just disrupted an industry, but they've solved humanity itself.
This raises an important question. It's what sociologists often call the utopian paradox.
The utopian paradox.
Yeah. To achieve absolute leaderless freedom, humans have historically always been asked to surrender absolute control to a single, supposedly infallible visionary. We see this pattern everywhere, from radical political movements to, as you said, tech billionaires claiming they're going to save humanity.
So it's the paradox of having to surrender your autonomy to the architect in order to enter the world where you theoretically have infinite autonomy.
Precisely. And the author actually codifies this paradox using a very specific piece of Taoist terminology. They state that humanity's only bright future is to follow their guidance to escape the 36-8 diagram array.
Like the 36-8 diagram arrays. When I first read that, it sounded like a mystical labyrinth, like something out of a fantasy novel or a video game.
It does sound like that, but it's actually a fascinating philosophical metaphor. In Taoist cosmology, the Bagua, or the 8 diagrams, represent the fundamental principles of reality. They're the foundational elements that make up the universe and human interaction.
Oh, like the elements used in divination.
Exactly, like the I Ching. Furthermore, the number 36 is highly significant in Chinese esoteric traditions. It often represents the sum total of all strategies or heavenly paradigms.
So it's not a literal maze that we're trapped in.
Hmm.
It's a mental and societal framework.
Exactly. The author is using this imagery to describe the current paradigm of human intellect. The 36-8 diagram arrays represent all possible intellectual, spiritual, and societal strategies we currently rely on. Our laws, our philosophies, our economic theories.
All the tools we think are helping us.
Right. The author's argument is that you cannot use the tools of the current reality to build the new one. No matter how intelligent a person is, if they try to solve the world's problems using politics, economics, or traditional philosophy, they are just running into dead ends inside this massive cosmological trap.
And the author claims to be the only one standing outside the maze, holding the map.
That is the ultimate ultimatum of the text. Freedom is absolute, human goodness is infinite, and paradise is achievable. But the gateway to that paradise is astonishingly narrow, and it is guarded by a single mind.
Wow. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We started out by asking you to imagine a world entirely stripped of its rulebook. We live in a society that is incredibly heavy on boundaries. Everything is codified, licensed, recorded, tracked.
Very restrictive.
Yeah. And the vision we explored today from Deiform Buddha completely inverts that. It suggests a society devoid of all external constraints, powered entirely by an evolved, self-sacrificing human empathy. An Earth family organized into rotating pods of 300 people, constantly shuffling across a borderless globe just to prevent the stagnation of greed.
But as we've seen, it's also a society whose existence is entirely dependent on trusting the unmatched brilliance of a single author. It forces us to ask whether true equality can ever actually be designed from the top down.
Absolutely. And again, we really want to reiterate that our goal today was simply to act as your tour guides through this incredibly unique piece of source material. We are entirely impartial here. We are not endorsing the abolition of driver's licenses, and we certainly are validating the author's claims of supreme messianic insight.
Right, no endorsements here.
We are purely sharing these paradigm-shifting ideas because of what they reveal about our current world.
Engaging with extreme visions of the future is a necessary intellectual exercise. By examining what this author wants to tear down, we are forced to articulate exactly why we keep those structures up.
Yeah, it makes you defend your reality.
Exactly. It acts as a mirror, reflecting our deepest anxieties about human nature and our most profound hopes for what we might actually be capable of.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to take with you today.
Yeah.
Something to just mull over while you're commuting home or making dinner tonight. Think back to that opening scenario. If every law, every rule, every societal boundary, and every police force simply vanished tomorrow, what would your first instinct truly be?
Would you panic?
Right. Would you immediately start hoarding resources, locking your doors, and protecting what's yours? Or would you walk outside and instinctively start building a cooperative second home with your neighbors? Are our heavy bureaucratic laws an accurate reflection of our deeply flawed human nature? Or, and this is the really wild thought, are those laws the very things preventing us from evolving past it?